The blade pressed deeper into Sienna's throat, drawing a thin crimson line that trickled down her pale skin. Yuri's breath reeked of vodka and violence as he leaned in close, his lips curling into a sneer. "You think you're a hero, little whore?" He laughed, the sound like bones snapping in the dark. "You're nothing, just another piece of street trash I'm going to throw away." Behind Yuri, 3 Bratva soldiers pinned down the trembling 9-year-old girl. Lily's eyes were wide with terror, locked onto Sienna's battered face. She had stopped screaming. Now she just watched this gaunt woman with hollow cheeks and silver-gray eyes who had thrown herself between her and the monsters. Sienna's fingers tightened around her rusted metal rod. Her only weapon, her only companion through 7 years of hell. The iron was slick with her own blood, mixing with the rust like old wounds meeting new. She could taste copper on her tongue. Her vision blurred at the edges, 3 cracked ribs screaming with every shallow breath, but she didn't let go. She never let go. "Get your hands off that child." Sienna's voice came out as a broken rasp, barely more than a whisper, but sharp enough to cut through the night. In the distance, growing louder like approaching thunder, came the unmistakable purr of luxury engines. Black SUVs. 5 of them. 10. The convoy of death dressed in Italian leather and cold vengeance. Yuri's smile faltered. He had no idea what he had just started. He had no idea whose daughter he had tried to take. He had no idea that the man coming for him had burned entire empires to ash for lesser offenses. And he had absolutely no idea that this broken woman, bleeding on the cold concrete, this homeless survivor who had already crawled through hell and refused to stay dead, was about to become the most protected soul in Chicago's criminal underworld. A living legend, the shield of the Moretti Empire, forged not from wealth or blood ties, but from a rusted metal rod and a heart that simply would not stop beating for the innocent. 12 hours earlier, Sienna had been nobody. 12 hours later, her path was irrevocably bound to the most powerful empire in the city. If this story satisfies your soul, hit the like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next chapter. Because Sienna's journey is just beginning, and you won't want to miss how a broken woman rises to stand beside the most dangerous man in Chicago. 12 hours earlier, the concrete beneath the overpass was cold as dead bone. Sienna opened her eyes before dawn could even begin to rise, her survival instinct waking her before her biological clock did. Her hand reached out into the darkness, not for a blanket, not for a pillow, but for the iron bar. Her fingers touched the cold metal, and she exhaled in relief. It was still there. Her only friend was still there. She sat up inside her torn sleeping bag, her bones cracking like those of an old woman, even though she was only 27 years old. 7 years of sleeping on concrete would do that to a body. She checked the iron bar first, wiped off the dust from the night before, and only then checked herself. That was her first rule. Weapon first, self second, because without a weapon, the self meant nothing at all. Sienna stood up, rolled the sleeping bag, stuffed it into her battered backpack. She owned exactly 2 sets of clothes, one on her body and one in the pack. Today she would change into the one in the pack, wash what she was wearing at the public tap in the park, dry it on the fence when no one was looking. This was her routine. Wake up, check the weapon, change clothes, find food, survive another day, repeat. She walked toward the public tap 3 blocks from under the bridge, the iron bar hidden inside the sleeve of her loose jacket. The water, cold as ice, ran over her face, and she did not shiver. She had forgotten how to shiver a long time ago. Her face reflected dimly in a puddle, hollow cheekbones, sunken silver-gray eyes, pale skin that had never known moisturizer or lipstick. She looked like a ghost. Perhaps she truly was one. "Sister Sienna." A familiar voice called from behind her. She turned, her hand already tight around the iron bar, then relaxed when she saw Tommy, a 14-year-old boy with dirty blonde hair and a smudged face, another street child like her. He was the closest thing to a friend Sienna had had in 7 years. "Have you eaten yet?" Tommy asked, worry in his voice. Sienna shook her head. "Not yet." He pulled half a loaf of bread from his pocket, hard, but still edible. "I found it behind the bakery. They threw it away this morning." Sienna looked at the boy, then at the bread. She wanted to refuse, but her stomach was churning. She had not eaten since the day before yesterday. "Thank you," she said, her voice rough. She bit into the hard bread, chewing slowly so her stomach would not go into shock. Tommy sat beside her, looking at the iron bar in her hand. "You trained again last night," she nodded. "Every night. 50 strikes, 50 blocks, 50 thrusts." She had taught herself from videos on the library computers, from self-defense books she read in secret before the library closed. This iron bar was the perfect weapon. Long enough to keep distance, heavy enough to cause damage, legal enough that the police would not bother her. Just a discarded piece of iron. Sir, I picked it up to sell for scrap. You should get a knife, Tommy said. It is safer. Sienna shook her head. A knife means getting close. A knife means seeing blood on your own hands. She had seen too much blood in her life already. She did not need any more. The street had its own rules, and Sienna had learned every one of them by heart, in blood and tears. Do not trust strangers. Do not sleep in shelters because there are too many predators. Do not accept help with conditions. Never, never let anyone touch a child in front of you. The last rule was the most important. It was the rule she had written with her own blood, with the tears she cried 10 years earlier beside her sister's body. Sienna stood up, brushed the dust from her pants. She would head toward Lincoln Park. There was a trash bin from a hot dog cart there, sometimes with leftover food still good. She did not know that today that park would change her life forever. She did not know that fate was waiting for her there, in the form of a 9-year-old girl in a pink dress and a black van with 4 silhouettes inside. 10 years earlier, Sienna once had a reason to live, and that reason was named Mia. Her half-sister, born when Sienna was 7 years old, just after her mother died of cancer. Her father remarried so quickly that the grass had not yet had time to grow over her mother's grave. The new woman was an alcoholic with hands heavy as sledgehammers and a heart cold as ice. She hated Sienna from the first moment, her husband's other child, a thorn in the eye, an obstacle on the road to an inheritance. Sienna could not remember the first time she was hit. Perhaps when she broke a plate at 8 years old, perhaps earlier, but she remembered very clearly the time her stepmother pressed a hot iron against her shoulder. She remembered the smell of burning flesh, remembered her own scream of pain, remembered her father standing in the doorway looking in and then turning away as if he saw nothing. The scar was still there on her shoulder even now, a strip of puckered skin running from her shoulder down her arm, a permanent proof of a hellish childhood. Then Mia was born, and everything changed, not in a better direction for Sienna, but in the sense that she now had something to protect. Mia was a little angel with big round brown eyes and black hair soft as silk. The child laughed often, cried little, and loved Sienna with the pure kind of love that only children can give. The stepmother did not beat Mia, at least not at first. She poured all her anger onto Sienna, turning her into a punching bag whenever the alcohol took hold, and Sienna accepted it. She accepted every slap, every punch, every night locked inside a dark closet, because in exchange Mia was safe. "Sister, why are you hurt?" Mia asked one night when Sienna slipped into her room with a bruised eye. "I just fell," Sienna lied, a painful smile on her lips. "I will be more careful. Does it hurt?" "No, it does not hurt." Sienna pulled her sister into her arms, breathing in the smell of children's soap in her hair. "With you here, I do not hurt at all." Mia looked up at her, her big eyes full of worry. "Sister, you will protect me forever, right?" "Forever," Sienna promised, her voice firm as a nail driven into wood. "I promise you. No matter what happens, I will always protect you." That was a promise Sienna kept for 10 years, until the day she could not keep it anymore. When Sienna was 17, her stepmother was arrested for drug possession. Her father had left 5 years earlier, disappearing as if he had never existed. Sienna and Mia were pushed into the foster care system, and that was when the real hell began. They were separated. Sienna went to one family, Mia to another. She begged, she cried, she pleaded with the social workers to let them stay together, but no one listened. Mia was 10, cute, easy to place. Sienna was 17, nearly grown. A burden. They did not need her to come along. Mia's foster family looked kind on the surface. The husband was a middle-aged man with a gentle smile and a soft voice. Sienna hated him immediately. She did not know why. Only instinct. The instinct she had sharpened through 10 years of living with an abuser. There was something wrong in his eyes when he looked at Mia. Sienna visited her sister every week, even though it took 2 hours by bus, and every week she saw Mia change. The child laughed less, spoke less. Her eyes became empty, like a candle someone had blown out from the inside. "Is something wrong, Mia?" Sienna asked. Mia shook her head, but her hands trembled. Sienna knew. She knew something terrible was happening. She reported it to the social workers. She talked about Mia's changes, about the foster father's eyes, about her intuition. They promised to investigate. 1 week later, Sienna received a call, not from a social worker, but from the police. Mia had jumped from the 3rd floor. Sienna arrived at the hospital in time to see the white sheet pulled over her sister's small body. 10 years old. Her sister was only 10 years old. The child had chosen death over what he had done to her, over the things adults refused to believe, refused to see, refused to protect her from. Sienna did not cry. She did not scream. She only stood there, looking at the white sheet, and felt something inside her shatter. Her promise, her heart, her soul. All of it turned to ashes in that cold hospital corridor. That night, Sienna ran away from foster care. She could not stay inside the system that had killed her sister. She ran into the night with an empty heart and a vow that she would never allow another child to suffer Mia's fate again. The streets do not welcome 17-year-old girls who run away from home. Sienna learned this very quickly. She slept in a park on the first night, hungry and cold, clutching her backpack like a life raft. On the second night, she was nearly attacked by a drunk man and had to run for her life across 3 blocks. On the third night, she met a woman named Linda. Linda seemed kind. She bought Sienna a hot meal, gave her a place to sleep for the night, said she ran a shelter for homeless girls. And Sienna believed her because she was too hungry, too tired, too broken to doubt, and that was the biggest mistake of her life. She woke up in a room without windows with her hand chained to the wall. Linda was not kind. Linda was a recruiter for a human trafficking ring that hunted young girls no one cared about, no one searched for, no one remembered. Girls like Sienna. For 2 years she lived in a hell no language can describe. She was kept in a brothel on the outskirts of Chicago, where men came and went, where screams were swallowed by soundproof walls, where girls learned how to die inside while their bodies were still alive. Sienna tried to escape 3 times. The first time she was caught after 2 hours and beaten so badly she could not walk for a week. The second time she reached the main road, but a taxi driver took her straight back because he was one of them. The third time she no longer had the strength to run. When she was 20, she discovered she was pregnant. She did not know who the father was. It could have been any of the dozens of faces she tried to erase from memory. But she knew one thing. She wanted to keep the baby. For the first time in 3 years, she had something to live for. A small life growing inside her. Innocent, pure, completely hers. They would not allow her to keep it. The baby would affect business, they said. In the 5th month, when Sienna had begun to feel the small kicks inside her, they dragged her to an illegal clinic. She screamed. She begged. She bit the hand of the man holding her and was punched until 2 of her teeth broke. Then everything went dark. And when she woke, her belly was empty. Her child was gone. Sienna remembered nothing of the weeks that followed. She was like a walking corpse. Eyes that saw nothing. Ears that heard nothing. She had lost Mia. She had lost her unborn child. She had nothing left to lose. And perhaps because of that, the universe finally showed her mercy. 3 months later, the police raided the brothel. Sienna did not know who had reported it or why they came. She only knew the blinding flashlights, the chaos of shouting, and someone pulling her out of that dark room. She was rescued, but no one truly saved her. The police questioned her, kept her in a temporary shelter for a few weeks, then released her onto the street with a referral paper to a center for trafficking victims. Sienna did not go. She no longer trusted any system. The system had killed Mia. The system had failed to save her for 3 years. She would save herself. And she did. For the next 7 years, Sienna lived on the streets of Chicago. She learned how to find food in trash bins without poisoning herself, how to sleep with one eye open, how to make herself invisible so no one noticed her. She found an iron bar at an abandoned construction site, sharpened it, trained with it every night until it became part of her body. She taught herself to fight through books and videos, turned herself into a weapon, and she created her final rule, the most important rule of all. If she ever saw a child in danger, she would not walk away. She would not wait for adults to intervene. She would not trust the system. She would act even if it meant dying. Because she had not saved Mia, she had not saved her own child, but she would save other children, and that was the only vow that kept her alive. At the same time that Sienna was digging through trash bins for breakfast on the south side of Chicago, 20 miles to the north, another man was also having breakfast. But his meal was served on an oak table imported from Italy in the dining room of a 20-acre estate, surrounded by a 3-meter security fence and surveillance cameras everywhere. Lucian Moretti, 36 years old, head of the Moretti crime family, one of the most powerful mafia families in Chicago, was cutting pancakes into small pieces, not for himself but for the 9-year-old little princess sitting across from him, clutching a worn stuffed bear named Mr. Buttons. "Daddy, you are cutting them too small. I am not a baby anymore," Lily pouted, her big brown eyes looking at him with adorable reproach. Lucian looked up and something strange happened. The ice-cold face of the Mafia boss softened, his steel-gray eyes melting into something unexpectedly warm. He smiled, a rare smile that no one but Lily ever saw. "You will always be my baby. Even when you are 50, I will still cut your pancakes. You are weird." Lily giggled and began talking about school, about her math test where she got the highest score in class, about her friend Emma, who fell while playing jump rope, about how her teacher praised her drawings. Lucian listened to every word, nodding at the right moments, asking the right questions, as if these small stories were the most important intelligence reports in the world. This was the only moment of the day when he was not Lucian Moretti the boss. He was only a father who loved his daughter more than his own life. Isabella had given him this gift before she left. His wife, the love of his life, the only woman who had ever melted his frozen heart. She died on the delivery table from unstoppable bleeding, only able to look at her daughter once before closing her eyes. Lucian had stood there helpless, watching blood flow from his wife's body, and being unable to do anything. He, the man who could order a killing with a nod, who made the entire Chicago underworld tremble, could not save the woman he loved. 9 years had passed, and the wound was still not healed, but Lily was proof that Isabella had once existed. The child had her mother's eyes, her mother's smile, even the way she tilted her head when curious was exactly the same, and Lucian would burn the world to the ground if anyone dared touch her. The phone in his pocket vibrated. He glanced at the screen and saw Marcus, his right-hand man. He did not want to answer, did not want to break this rare peaceful moment, but Marcus never called at breakfast, unless it was important. Daddy needs to take a call for a moment. Princess. Lucian stood up and went out onto the balcony. What is it? His voice changed instantly from warm to cold, as if someone had flipped a switch. Kozlov is moving strangely, Marcus said tensely. His people are appearing in the suburbs near Lily's school. Lucian said nothing, but his hand tightened until the phone creaked. Viktor Kozlov, head of the Bratva, the Russian Mafia, the sworn enemy of the Moretti family. He had repeatedly proposed human trafficking and drug deals, and Lucian had refused every time. The Morettis had rules: no trafficking, no drugs, no touching innocent women and children. Viktor hated those rules. He wanted to destroy Lucian, not only his empire, but the man himself. And the best way to destroy Lucian Moretti was to go after Lily, double the security around her. Lucian ordered, his voice now ice cold. I want Bruno glued to her whenever she leaves the house, and put someone on Kozlov, 24 on 24. If he breathes harder than normal, I want to know. He hung up and went back to the dining room. Lily was scribbling on a napkin, completely unaware that someone out there was planning to kidnap her. Lucian looked at his daughter and his heart tightened. He would not let anyone touch Lily, even if he had to kill every single Bratva man with his bare hands. Daddy. Lily looked up when Lucian returned to the table, her brown eyes shining with the kind of excitement only children have. This afternoon, can I go to Lincoln Park to eat ice cream? Emma says there is a very good ice cream cart there, with mint chocolate flavor that I have never tried. Lucian sat down, trying to keep his face calm even as everything inside him was screaming no. Lincoln Park, a public park. Thousands of people passing through, hundreds of blind spots he could not control, and Kozlov was moving strangely. Not today, princess, he said gently but firmly. Daddy is busy and cannot take you, but I do not need you to take me. Lily pouted, her lower lip sticking out. Nina can go with me. I promise I will be good. I will not run around. I will not talk to strangers. Just eat ice cream and come back, please, Daddy. She clasped her hands together, eyes wide, a move she had mastered since she learned to speak, and which always struck Lucian's weakest point. Lucian sighed. He could refuse anyone in the world, business rivals, other mafia bosses, even governments, but he could not refuse those eyes, the same eyes as Isabella's. All right, he said after a moment of silence, but on one condition. Lily cheered, bouncing in her chair. I promise, I promise, I promise. 1 hour, Lucian raised one finger. Only 1 hour. Nina goes with you and Bruno must go too. You do not leave their sight even for 1 second. Do you understand? Yes, I understand. Lily nodded quickly, her black hair flying. I will be the best. Lucian called Bruno in. The bodyguard as big as a refrigerator stepped through the door, muscles rolling under his black suit. Bruno was a former mercenary who had worked for Moretti for 10 years, loyal like a guard dog and dangerous like a cobra. If anyone could protect Lily besides Lucian himself, it was Bruno. You take Lily and Nina to Lincoln Park, Lucian ordered, his voice returning to the cold tone of the boss. 1 hour, no more. You do not leave the child's side. If there is anything suspicious, anyone looking at her too long, any vehicle that seems wrong, you call me immediately and bring her back. Do you understand? Perfectly, boss. Bruno nodded, his eyes passing over Lily with a protective look. I will guard her like my own eyes. Nina appeared at the door, the middle-aged Mexican woman who had been Lily's nanny since she was born, the only person besides Lucian whom Lily completely trusted. "Are you ready, little angel?" Nina smiled warmly. Lily jumped down from the chair and ran to hug her father tightly. "Thank you, Daddy. I love you more than anything." Lucian hugged his daughter, breathing in the scent of children's shampoo from her hair, his heart, hardened by years in the underworld, melting like butter. "I love you too," he whispered. "Be careful, princess." Lily let go, took Nina's hand, and ran to the door. Mr. Buttons tucked under her arm, bouncing with each step. Bruno followed behind, huge like a moving wall. Lucian stood by the window watching the black SUV carrying his daughter leave the gate. He watched until the vehicle disappeared around the corner, and a strange unease crawled up his spine. He brushed it away. Bruno was there. Nina was there. Only 1 hour. What could happen? He did not know that it was the last time he would see his daughter's smile, before everything changed forever. He did not know that in Lincoln Park fate was waiting, and fate came in the shape of a black van with 4 men inside. Lincoln Park was crowded that afternoon as it was every day. Children running across the grass, mothers chatting on benches, couples walking hand in hand along the stone paths. And in the middle of all that peaceful scenery, Sienna was digging through a trash bin beside a hot dog cart. She found half a sausage someone had left behind, still wrapped, not touching the ground. Today was a lucky day. She sat on a nearby bench and ate slowly so her stomach would not go into shock, her eyes still sweeping the area by habit. 7 years on the streets had taught her never to let her guard down, even while eating, even while sleeping. Part of her was always awake, always watching, always ready to run or fight. And that was when she saw the little girl, a small angel in a pale pink dress, long black hair tied into 2 ponytails, skipping toward the ice cream cart, clutching a worn stuffed bear and smiling brightly at the middle-aged woman beside her, probably her nanny. Behind them was a man as big as a refrigerator, in a black suit, his eyes scanning the surroundings like a guard, a bodyguard. Sienna recognized it immediately. This was not an ordinary child. Her family was rich, perhaps, or powerful, or dangerous. Families that needed bodyguards for their children were usually one of those 3. Sienna was about to look away, keep eating her sausage and forget it, not her business. But something held her gaze, not the child, but the van. The black van parked at the edge of the park, about 50 meters from the ice cream cart, the engine still running. She could see exhaust from the tailpipe, the windows tinted so dark she could not see through them, and it had been there at least 20 minutes. She knew, because she had been in the park since noon. The van had arrived shortly after she first sat down on the bench, and it had not moved. No one got out, no one got in. It just waited. Sienna's instinct screamed inside her head. She had seen this before. In the years of hell, she had learned how to recognize predators, how they watched, how they waited, how they chose the perfect moment to strike. This van was hunting, and the prey was the girl in pink. Sienna looked closer. Inside the van through the dark glass, she glimpsed silhouettes, not 1 but 4. 4 figures sitting still, and she was certain they were watching the girl. Sienna's heart began to race. She looked at the large bodyguard, who was now staring at his phone while the girl and the nanny waited in line for ice cream. He was distracted, perhaps thinking that in a crowded park in broad daylight no one would dare do anything. A fatal mistake. Traffickers did not care whether it was crowded or empty. They only cared about opportunity, and right now opportunity was opening in front of them. Sienna stood up and threw the rest of the sausage into the trash. She was no longer hungry. Her stomach was tightening from something else. Fear. Not for herself, but for the girl in pink, who was laughing with her nanny, unaware that 4 beasts were lurking a few dozen meters away. What should she do? She could leave. This was not her business. The child had a bodyguard, had a nanny, had protection. She did not need a dirty homeless woman interfering. But then Mia's face rose in her mind. The big brown eyes, the innocent smile, and the last question echoed from 10 years ago. "Sister, will you protect me forever?" Sienna took a deep breath. She could not save Mia. She could not save the child she never got to meet. But this girl in pink with the angelic smile, still had a chance. And Sienna would not walk away. She moved slowly toward the ice cream cart, pretending to be an ordinary passerby, her hand sliding inside her jacket, gripping the cold iron bar. If anything happened, she would be the first to act. She only hoped she was imagining things, that the van belonged to someone waiting for a relative, that nothing bad was about to happen. But deep down, Sienna knew she was not imagining it. Her survival instinct had never been wrong. Sienna sat down on a bench about 15 meters from the ice cream cart, close enough to watch but far enough not to draw attention. She pulled a broken iPhone from her pocket and pretended to scroll even though the screen had been dead for a long time. Just a woman resting in the park. Nothing suspicious. But inside she was fighting herself. "You are crazy." "Sienna," the voice in her head screamed. "Who are you to interfere?" A homeless woman, a piece of society's trash, a ghost no one sees. The child has a bodyguard, has a nanny, has a powerful family behind her. What do you think you can do? Die for nothing and no one will even claim your body. She knew the voice was right. She had nothing but a rusted iron bar and a malnourished body. She had no phone to call the police, no money to hire help, only herself. And what was she worth? No one would remember her if she died today. No one would cry. No one would put flowers on her grave. She would vanish from the world as if she had never existed, and life would go on as if nothing had happened. So why did she not just stand up and leave? The answer came when the girl in pink turned back with a mint chocolate ice cream in her hand and a bright smile on her lips. The girl said something to the nanny, giggled, then took a big lick, and in that moment, Sienna no longer saw the girl in pink. She saw Mia. Mia at 8, sitting on a hospital bed after falling off her bicycle, asking for strawberry ice cream. Mia at 6, crying because she was bullied at school, clinging to her sister, and saying she was the only one who understood her. Mia at 7, on the last night, Sienna saw her alive, asking a question Sienna would carry to her grave. "Sister, will you protect me forever? Forever?" Sienna had promised, and she had broken that promise. She had trusted the system. She had waited for adults to intervene. She had not acted when she still could, and Mia had died. Tears welled at the corners of Sienna's eyes, and she wiped them away quickly. Not now, not here. She could not be weak, could not lose focus. She looked back at the black van. Still there, still waiting, the engine still running, the 4 figures inside still unmoving. Then she looked at the bodyguard. He had put his phone away, but his eyes were now turned toward the other side, where a sudden, loud crash of a falling display near the parking lot drew his attention. Distracted for the split second the predators had been waiting for, Sienna knew what would happen next. She had lived long enough in darkness to understand how predators worked. They waited until the guard turned away or lost focus. They struck fast, took down the adult first, then carried the prey away in seconds. Everything would be over before anyone could react, unless someone was already ready, unless someone was waiting for them to move. Sienna took a deep breath and felt the cold iron bar inside her sleeve. She was not strong, not professionally trained, had no chance against 4 men, but she had what they did not. She was not afraid of dying. She had died 10 years earlier in a cold hospital corridor when she saw the white sheet over her sister's body. She had died again in the dark room of the brothel, and again when they took the child from her womb. She had died so many times that death itself no longer frightened her, but letting another child suffer. Mia's fate was more frightening than any death. Sienna tightened her grip on the iron bar. The decision was made. She would not leave. She would sit here, watch, wait. And if the men in that van dared touch the girl in pink, she would be the last wall between them and their prey. Even if that wall collapsed, even if she had to bleed, even if she had to die, this time she would not break her promise. Everything happened so fast that Sienna almost missed it. The girl in pink had just finished licking her ice cream, turned back to take the nanny's hand and started walking toward the black SUV in the parking area. The large bodyguard walked behind them with one hand in his pocket and the other holding his phone, his fingers typing and his eyes fixed on the screen. And that was when the black van began to move. Sienna saw it first. The van rolled forward slowly without a turn signal, without a horn, gliding silently toward the group like a predator closing in. Her heart hammered in her chest. This was it. She stood up with her hand already tight around the iron bar in her sleeve. The van door flew open before the vehicle had fully stopped, and 4 dark figures sprang out like a compressed spring finally released, dressed in black from head to toe with hoods hiding their faces, except for their eyes. The first held a stun gun with 2 wired prongs. The second carried a black sack. The third and fourth held baseball bats. They moved with the coordination of a team that had rehearsed this many times. Fast, precise, without wasted words. Bruno was the first target. The bodyguard had just lifted his eyes from his phone, his combat instinct making him reach for his waist where his gun was hidden. But he was a fraction too slow. The stun gun cracked and the 2 prongs hit his chest. 50,000 volts tore through his body. The man, as big as a refrigerator, collapsed like a felled tree, convulsing uncontrollably, his phone flying from his hand. The ice cream the girl had bought fell to the pavement and melted in the afternoon sun. Nina screamed and instinctively shoved Lily behind her. But she was not a fighter. Only a 52-year-old nanny with a loving heart and hands meant for cooking and cleaning. The third man swung the bat and struck her in the side. Sienna heard the sound of bone breaking, or perhaps she imagined it, but Nina's cry of pain was real. The woman fell, clutching her side, her face white as paper. Lily stood frozen like a statue. Her ice cream had fallen from her hand. Mint chocolate streaked across her pink dress. Her big brown eyes were stretched wide in disbelief at what she was seeing. Uncle Bruno convulsing on the ground, Nina, who sang her to sleep every night, clutching her stomach and moaning, and 4 dark shapes advancing on her like monsters out of a nightmare. Then Lily screamed, the heart-tearing scream of a 9-year-old facing hell for the first time in her life. The sound cut through the park, sent birds scattering and made people turn to look, but no one moved. Everyone froze in fear, their minds refusing to process what was happening in front of them. The second man lifted the sack to throw it over Lily's head. The fourth grabbed her arm, his nails scraping her soft skin and leaving red marks. Lily fought, clawed, bit his hand. He cursed in Russian and slapped her, snapping her head sideways. Blood seeped from the corner of her mouth and mixed with the tears streaming down her face. No one helped. Dozens of people in the park, and not a single one ran forward. They stood there, afraid, helpless, filming with their phones as if this were a movie and not real life. Sienna did not film. Sienna ran. She ran faster than she ever had in her life, her bare feet pounding the grass, the iron bar already out of her sleeve. She did not think about herself, did not think about danger, did not think about 4 men larger than her with weapons in their hands. She thought only of the big brown eyes filled with tears, eyes exactly like Mia's. This time she would not stand and watch. This time she would not wait for someone else to act. This time, even if she had to die, she would be the wall between the monsters and the innocent child. Sienna screamed. The scream of an animal driven into a corner, the scream of 10 years of compressed pain finally released. "Let the girl go, you bastards." The 4 men turned, and for the first time they saw her. A thin woman with tangled brown hair, filthy clothes and silver-gray eyes burning as if there were fire inside them. A rusted iron bar about 60 centimeters long in her hand, glinting in the afternoon sun. She looked like a ghost stepping out of hell, and in some way she truly was. Sienna lunged forward like a ghost. The first man, the one holding the sack, did not have time to react. He barely turned his head before the iron bar came down and smashed into his right knee with all the strength Sienna could summon. The sound of bone breaking cracked through the air like a rotten branch snapping in two. He screamed, the scream of a wounded animal, and fell, clutching his leg, the sack slipping from his hand. 1 down, 3 left. The second man turned, surprise flashing in his eyes when he saw that the attacker was only a thin, starving-looking woman. He swung his baseball bat straight at Sienna's head. She sidestepped. 7 years of training in dark alleys had taught her how to read an opponent's movement, and her iron bar snapped into his wrist before the bat could reach her skull. Bone cracked. The bat clattered to the ground. He howled, clutching his hand as blood seeped from the cut the sharp edge of the bar had made. 2 down, 2 left, but now Sienna no longer had surprise on her side. The third and fourth men had recovered, and no longer saw her as a small threat. They attacked together, one from the left, one from the right. Sienna blocked the strike from the left with her bar, metal ringing against metal, but the blow from the right slammed into her stomach. She doubled over, the breath forced from her lungs, a bitter taste rising in her throat. Pain as if someone had shoved a ball of fire into her belly. But Sienna did not fall. She had endured worse pain than this. The hot iron on her shoulder, the nights beaten unconscious in the brothel, the tearing agony when they took the child from her womb. Compared to those, this was nothing. She swung the bar upward and struck the third man's jaw. He staggered back, blood and teeth flying from his mouth, but the fourth man grabbed her hair and yanked her head back. Sienna screamed as her neck twisted at a wrong angle. He punched her face once, twice, 3 times. She felt her nose break, blood bursting out and running over her lips and chin and dripping onto her clothes. Her vision blurred, filled with dancing spots of light. "You bitch," he hissed in English thick with Russian accent. "You dare interfere in Bratva business." He threw her into a nearby tree. Sienna's back slammed into the rough bark, and she heard a crack inside her chest. Ribs, at least 3, maybe more. The pain spread through her body like a tidal wave. She slid down to the ground, gasping, every breath like a knife stabbing into her lungs. The iron bar was still in her hand, even lying on the ground, even with blood covering her face, even with broken ribs grinding together with every movement. She did not let go of the bar. She looked toward Lily. The girl was being dragged by the third man, the one Sienna had just knocked some teeth out of. He grabbed Lily's hair and pulled her toward the van, blood from his mouth dripping onto her pink dress. Lily cried, screamed, fought, but he was too strong. No. Sienna ground her teeth and tried to rise. Her broken ribs screamed inside her body, protesting every movement. She did not care. She planted the bar on the ground like a crutch and forced herself upright. Blood from her broken nose ran into her mouth and she spat it out, red against the green grass. The fourth man stared at her in disbelief. "You still want to die?" Sienna did not answer. She stepped forward one step at a time, slow like a corpse, the iron bar dragging on the ground behind her. She looked at Lily, at the brown eyes full of tears and fear, eyes heartbreakingly like Mia's. "Run," she screamed, her voice hoarse with blood in her throat. "Run, child." But Lily could not run. The third man was pulling her toward the van. Only a few meters left. Sienna lunged, ignoring the pain, ignoring her collapsing body, ignoring everything except the girl in pink. She swung the bar one last time and struck the back of the man's knee. He fell and released Lily. Lily fell too. Her knees scraped on the pavement, but she was free. "Run," Sienna shouted, standing between Lily and the kidnappers. "Find an adult. Call the police. Run." Lily looked at her with tears in her eyes, then turned and ran. But after 3 steps, she stopped because another car had arrived. A sleek black Mercedes pulled up beside the van, and the man who stepped out was not a policeman. He was a middle-aged man with close-cut gray hair, eyes cold as ice, and a smile that made Sienna feel chilled to the bone. Yuri, Viktor Kozlov's right hand, the man known as the Knife of the Bratva. He had come to make sure the job was finished. Yuri stepped out of the car with the unhurried ease of a man who knew all the power in the world was in his hands. He was about 1.80 meters tall, with close-cropped gray hair and an expensive gray suit, as if he were heading to a cocktail party rather than a kidnapping. His eyes swept over the chaotic scene, 2 of his men groaning on the ground, one holding his bleeding mouth, another clutching his broken arm, and in the middle of all that chaos, a thin woman who looked half dead, standing in front of his prey. "Interesting," Yuri said in a low voice with a trace of Russian in his English. "A stray dog who wants to be a hero." He walked toward Sienna, each step slow and confident. There was no need to hurry. The prey had nowhere left to run. Sienna stood there with the iron bar trembling in her hand, blood still running from her broken nose down her chin. She knew she had no strength left to fight, broken ribs grinding against her lungs with every breath, the edges of her vision darkening, her legs shaking so badly she did not know how long she could remain standing. But she did not retreat. She stayed between Yuri and Lily, lifting the bar even though her arm shook like a leaf, her eyes still burning with defiance. Yuri stopped a few steps away and tilted his head as if studying a strange animal in a zoo. "Who are you?" he asked with genuine curiosity. "Not a bodyguard, not one of the Morettis, just a starving stray cat picked up from somewhere. And yet you dare interfere in Bratva business." Sienna did not answer. She had no breath left for words. All her remaining energy was being used to keep her legs from collapsing. Yuri shrugged and turned to issue orders to his men in Russian. The 2 who were still standing moved immediately. One ran toward Lily and grabbed the crying child's arm. The other circled behind Sienna. She tried to turn, but her body was at its limit. The man behind kicked the back of her knee, and Sienna dropped to her knees with a cry as her broken ribs jarred together. The iron bar was still in her hand, even kneeling on the ground, even in pain so great she felt she might faint. She did not let go. Yuri stepped forward and stood in front of her, looking down with amusement mixed with contempt. He pulled a knife from inside his jacket, the steel blade gleaming in the afternoon light. "Put the child in the car," he ordered without taking his eyes off Sienna. "And take this one too. Viktor might like her." Sienna heard Lily scream as she was dragged toward the van, the heart-tearing sound of a child being ripped from her safe world. No. She tried to rise, but the man behind stomped her back and forced her down. Her face pressed into the cold grass, the taste of dirt and blood mixing in her mouth. He grabbed her hair and yanked her head back, exposing her throat. Yuri knelt and pressed the knife against Sienna's neck, cold metal on her skin, sharp enough that a little pressure could sever her artery. "You think you are a hero, little bitch?" Yuri whispered, his breath reeking of vodka and cruelty. "You are nothing, just another piece of street trash I am about to throw away." He pressed the blade harder and a thin line of blood appeared and ran down Sienna's neck into her collar. She could feel her own heartbeat beneath the knife, fast and weak, like the wings of a dying butterfly. But she did not beg. She did not cry. Instead, she turned her head to look at Lily, who was being held by 3 Bratva men beside the van. The child had stopped screaming. Her big brown eyes locked onto Sienna, filled with terror and something else. Hope. Hope that this strange woman would save her. "Take your hands off the child." Sienna's voice came out like a broken whisper, weak but still sharp as a blade. Yuri laughed, a sound like bones breaking in the dark. He did not know what he had just set in motion. He did not know whose daughter he was trying to take, and he had no idea that in the distance, rolling closer like thunder, were the sounds of powerful engines. The Moretti convoy was coming. The sound came first, the roar of high-end engines. Not 1, not 2, but an entire convoy racing in at insane speed. Yuri looked up with the knife still pressed to Sienna's throat, and for the first time the smile on his lips faltered. 5 sleek black SUVs burst in from the end of the road, cutting through the park like bullets fired from a gun barrel. They screeched to a stop, tires screaming on the pavement, boxing in the van, and Yuri's Mercedes in a ring of steel. Doors flew open and dozens of men poured out, all in black suits, all armed, all with the eyes of men ready to kill without blinking, but none of them were as terrifying as the man who stepped out of the first car, Lucian Moretti, the boss of Chicago and the father of the girl being held hostage. Sienna saw him from her knees on the ground and understood at once why the underworld trembled at his name. He was 1.85 meters tall, broad-shouldered, built like he had been carved from stone. His face was angular and cold, without expression. But his steel-gray eyes were burning with something even more frightening than anger, the fury of a father about to lose his only child. A hellfire compressed into human form. Lucian stepped forward, each stride solid, not rushed and not slow. He did not need to run. He was death-walking and death never hurries. "Let my daughter go." His voice carried through the air, calm, in a way that was terrifying. No shouting, no screaming, just an order, cold as ice, sharp as a blade. Yuri stood and dragged Sienna up with him, using her as a living shield, the knife still at her throat, blood still seeping from the shallow cut. "Moretti." He laughed, but there was a tremor in it. "You came fast. I knew you would." Lucian did not look at Yuri. He looked at Lily, held by 3 Bratva men beside the van. The child was crying, tears streaming down her face, her lips trembling, but when she saw her father, her eyes lit up. "Daddy," she called in a broken voice. "Daddy." Something crossed Lucian's face too fast to name. Pain, fear, and love fierce enough to burn the world, then it vanished behind an icy mask. He could not let emotion rule him now. His daughter needed him calm, not mad. "I am here, princess," he said, his voice still steady. "You will be fine." Yuri pulled Sienna backward toward the van, his eyes flicking over the men of Moretti closing in. He knew he was outnumbered. Only 4 of his men were still standing, while Moretti had at least 20, all heavily armed. "Let us go," Yuri bargained, his confidence draining from his voice. "I will release the girl and this woman. Everyone walks away. No one gets hurt more." Lucian took another step, then stopped. His eyes finally went to Sienna, to the thin woman being used as a shield. He saw a homeless figure in filthy clothes, face covered in blood, hair wild. A woman society had thrown away. One no one would look at twice. But he also saw something else. The iron bar still in her hand, even with a knife at her throat. The silver-gray eyes still burning with will, not begging, not afraid, and the dried blood on her clothes. Blood spilled when she fought 4 Bratva men to protect his daughter. "Who are you?" Lucian asked, his voice still cold but changed. "No one," Sienna whispered, her voice raw with blood in her throat, "just someone who cannot stand by when a child is being hurt." Lucian looked at her for one more second, then turned to Yuri. "You do not get to bargain," he said, his voice colder than ice. "You touched my daughter. You think you survived this." Behind Yuri, Marcus had already moved, Lucian's right hand, a former Navy SEAL, the quietest killer in the Moretti world, circling behind the van where Yuri could not see, a loaded gun in his hand aimed straight at the shoulder of the man holding the hostage. The gunshot cracked like thunder in a clear sky. One shot, precise, decisive. The bullet struck Yuri's right shoulder at the joint and his arm fell slack. He cried out. The knife dropped and clattered on the ground. He released Sienna and clutched his wounded shoulder, staring back at Marcus, who stood with a faint curl of smoke from the muzzle. At the same moment, the Moretti men surged forward and overwhelmed the Bratva guards by the van. There were shouts and the sharp chaos of bodies colliding, but Lucian no longer saw any of it. He ran. For the first time in years, the boss of Chicago ran like an ordinary father afraid of losing his child. He reached the van and found Lily curled on the floor, her pink dress dusty and stained, her bear lost somewhere, her big brown eyes lifting to him. "Daddy!" she cried. Lucian pulled her into his arms and held her, as if he could press her back into his own heart, his whole body shaking in a way no one had ever seen. "I am here," he whispered into her hair. "You are safe now. No one will touch you again. I promise." Lily clung to him and cried until her trembling eased. Then Lucian carried her out, and his eyes swept the scene and found Sienna lying still where Yuri had dropped her. "That woman," he said with a steadier voice. "Take her to the car and call Dr. Vasquez to the house at once." Marcus hesitated. "She is only a homeless woman." "She saved my daughter." Lucian cut in. "She fought 4 men when no one else did. She is a guest of the Morettis." Marcus nodded and signaled for her to be lifted into an SUV. Lucian saw the thin woman laid on the seat, her breathing shallow, her eyes closed, the iron bar placed beside her as if it mattered. Even unconscious, her hand moved faintly toward it. Lucian held Lily closer and placed her in his car. He looked once more at Sienna and wondered who she was and why she would risk everything for a child she did not know. "Daddy," Lily whispered. "Calmer now. She saved me and told me to run. Will she be all right?" "She will be," Lucian said, kissing her forehead. "I will make sure of it." The convoy left the park behind with the wounded captors and the aftermath for the authorities. Yuri was taken to answer for what he had done. But that could wait. For now, Lucian wanted only to bring his daughter home safely and to be sure the woman who saved her did not fade away on the road back. Sienna opened her eyes and did not recognize where she was. The ceiling rose high above her with delicate golden lines. Crystal chandeliers glittered like 1,000 stars. Deep red velvet curtains fell in soft folds. She was lying on a bed 3 times larger than any she had ever seen, white silk sheets so smooth they felt like clouds. Her survival instinct snapped her, fully awake in an instant. Her heart raced, her breath quickened, her eyes swept the room searching for danger, for exits, for a weapon. Her hand reached to the side for the iron bar but touched only empty silk. It was not there. She tried to sit up but pain tore through her chest and she fell back with a groan. Ribs, she remembered, broken ribs, and her nose, and her neck, and probably more she could not count. "Calm down," a warm female voice said beside the bed. Sienna turned her head and saw a middle-aged woman with neatly pinned dark hair and silver-framed glasses sitting in a chair, wearing a white coat with a stethoscope and holding a clipboard. "A doctor, where am I?" Sienna asked, her voice rough like sandpaper in her throat. "Who brought me here? The Moretti estate," the woman replied calmly. "I am Dr. Elena Vasquez. You were brought here after losing consciousness in the park. You have 3 broken ribs, a broken nose, significant blood loss from multiple wounds and severe malnutrition. Honestly, I am surprised you survived that fight, Moretti." The name rang in Sienna's head like an alarm. She remembered the black convoy, the tall man with cold gray eyes, the ruthless precision of his men. Mafia. She was in the Mafia's den. "I need to go." Sienna tried to sit up again despite the pain. "I should not be here. Give me my things and I will leave now." Dr. Vasquez placed a hand on her shoulder and gently but firmly pushed her back. "You cannot go anywhere like this. Broken ribs can puncture a lung if you move too much. And Mr. Moretti has been very clear that you are a guest of the family and must be cared for until you recover." Sienna shook her head, her eyes still searching for an escape. "I do not need his help. I do not want to owe anyone." "You saved his daughter," Dr. Vasquez said softly. "You fought 4 kidnappers alone with an iron bar for a child you did not even know. In this world that is worth more than any debt." Sienna fell silent. The girl in pink with eyes like Mia's. "Is she all right?" Sienna asked more quietly. "Is she hurt?" "Lily is fine." The doctor smiled, shaken but not seriously injured. "She has been asking about you for 2 days since you lost consciousness. 2 days. Sienna murmured in disbelief. She had slept for 2 days. "Your body was exhausted," the doctor explained. "Long-term malnutrition, blood loss and trauma together. I am surprised it was only 2 days." The door suddenly opened, and Sienna flinched, her hand reaching for a weapon by instinct, but it was not a threat that appeared. It was Lily, the girl she had risked her life to save. Today in a blue dress with neatly tied hair and a worn stuffed bear in her arms. Mr. Buttons had been found. "You are awake," Lily cried, her brown eyes lighting up as she ran to the bed before the doctor could stop her and threw her arms around Sienna. Pain knifed through Sienna's ribs, but she did not push her away. She could not, because in that moment with small arms around her neck and the faint scent of children's shampoo in her nose, she did not see Lily. She saw Mia. Mia at 8, after a nightmare. Mia at 6, asking for a bedtime story. Mia, the sister she could not save. "You are a superhero," Lily whispered in awe. "You scared the bad men away. You saved me. You are the bravest person I have ever met." Tears welled in Sienna's eyes, and she could not stop them. She held Lily gently because of her ribs, but as tightly as she could, and for the first time in 10 years she cried, not from pain or despair, but because this time she had not failed. The door opened again, and this time the man who stepped in made the air in the room grow heavy. Lucian Moretti stood in the doorway, tall and commanding, filling the frame with his presence, wearing a 3-piece black suit, a white shirt buttoned to the collar, black hair slicked neatly back, not a strand out of place, not a wrinkle in his clothes, perfect in a way that felt cold. But his steel-gray eyes were fixed on Sienna with something unreadable. "Lily, go outside with Nina," Lucian said, his voice unchanged even when speaking to his daughter. "I need to talk to her," but Daddy, Lily began. "Lily?" Just one word, and the child fell silent. She slid off the bed, looked at Sienna with worry, then ran out. The door closed behind her, leaving Sienna and Lucian in a heavy silence. Dr. Vasquez had gone as well. Lucian walked toward the bed in slow, even steps like a panther approaching prey, pulled the chair from beside the bed, and set it about a meter away, then sat down. They looked at each other in silence. A mafia boss and a homeless woman. The most powerful man in Chicago, and a woman with nothing but a rusted iron bar. Two worlds facing each other in this luxurious room. "What is your name?" Lucian asked. "Why do you want to know?" Sienna replied, her voice still rough but not weak. Something flickered in Lucian's eyes. "Surprise, perhaps, because you saved my daughter," he said calmly. "I want to know the name of the person who risked her life for Lily." "Sienna," she answered after a moment. "Sienna Hayes." Lucian nodded, as if storing the name somewhere in his calculating mind. "Miss Hayes, I owe you, and in my world debts must be paid." "What do you want? Money, a house, a job?" "I want nothing," Sienna said plainly. "Just give me clothes and my iron bar and I will go." Lucian lifted a brow. Clearly not the answer he expected. "You have 3 broken ribs, a broken nose, and serious blood loss. And you want to go?" "I have lived with worse." Sienna met his eyes without blinking. "I do not need pity, and I do not want to owe anyone, especially someone like you, someone like me." Lucian tilted his head. "What do you mean?" Sienna knew she was playing with fire. This man could order her killed with a nod, and no one would ever find her body. But she had not survived 10 years of hell to learn how to bow. "Mafia," she said. "Criminals. Do you think I do not know who you are? The black convoy, the armed men, the way you give orders as if lives have no value. I have seen enough darkness to recognize a boss when I see one. Silence, a silence long enough that Sienna thought she had gone too far and was about to pay. But then Lucian did something she did not expect. He laughed. Not a cold or threatening laugh, but a soft, almost amused sound. "You are honest," he said. "I like that. Not many people dare tell me to my face what they think." "I have nothing to lose," Sienna said. "And that is your strength." Lucian stood and walked to the window, looking out over the wide garden. "You are right, I am what you think I am. I have done things ordinary people would call monstrous, but I am also the father of the child you saved, and in my world that matters." He turned back to her, his eyes no longer entirely cold. "You cannot leave, not because I stop you, but because Kozlov will come for you. You ruined his plan. You hurt his men. He will not let that go. Out there you are easy prey. Here you are protected. I do not need your protection." Sienna lifted her chin. "This is not a request." "Miss Hayes," Lucian moved toward the door. "You will stay until you are healed, and until I am done with Kozlov, then you may go wherever you wish." He stopped at the door and looked back once more. "Your iron bar is on the table beside your bed. I know it matters to you." Then he left, and Sienna turned to see the rusted bar resting on the expensive oak table, cleaned and polished. She reached for it and felt its familiar weight and wondered who that man truly was. A cold boss or a loving father? A monster or a man? Or perhaps, like herself, he was both. A week passed in the Moretti estate, and Sienna still could not leave. Not because she did not try, but because every time she put her feet on the floor, her broken ribs reminded her that her body needed time. Dr. Vasquez came every day to check her wounds, change the bandages, force her to take medicine and eat properly. Sienna hated being dependent, hated lying still while someone else took care of her. She had taken care of herself for 10 years, without needing or leaning on anyone, but her body gave her no choice. And there was another reason she had not tried to run away. Lily. The child appeared in Sienna's room every day, as regularly as the sunrise. Every morning after breakfast with her father, she ran in with Mr. Buttons under her arm, climbed onto the bed and started talking. She talked about school, about her friends, about the art teacher she loved. She talked about Nina recovering from being hit, about Bruno still having headaches from the electric shock. She talked about her father, about how he would not let her leave the house now, about how she missed the park but understood why he was worried. Sienna listened, at first only because she had nothing else to do, but gradually she began to care. Lily reminded her too much of Mia, not just the brown eyes but the way she tilted her head when curious, the way she smiled when telling happy stories, the way she sought safety in another's arms. "Sienna, do you know how to count stars?" Lily asked one night, when she slipped into Sienna's room after bedtime. "I cannot sleep." "Why not?" Sienna asked more gently than she had spoken to anyone in years. "I am scared," Lily admitted, hugging Mr. Buttons tightly. "I am scared the bad people will come back." Sienna looked at her, and her hardened heart ached. She pulled Lily close, carefully because of her ribs. "Come here," she said. "I will teach you how to count stars. Mia and I used to do that when she was afraid." They lay down and looked at the ceiling, and Sienna began to talk about constellations, about the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper and the old stories she used to tell her sister. Lily listened. Her eyes grew heavy, and she fell asleep in Sienna's arms. That night, Sienna did not have nightmares for the first time in years, but other nights were not like that. Nightmares came like uninvited guests, bringing back the dark room of the brothel, the chew's hands on her body, Mia's crying before she jumped, the face of the child she never got to meet. She woke in the night soaked in sweat, her heart racing, her hand searching for the iron bar in the dark, and she cried, silently, tears soaking the pillow. Crying for Mia, for the child taken from her, for herself, for the 10 years of hell she survived but never truly escaped. She did not know someone was watching. In his office, Lucian sat before the security monitor, showing Sienna's room, and saw everything. Saw her teaching Lily simple, self-defense moves in the afternoon. Saw her telling Lily stories in a voice softer than he ever imagined she had. Saw Lily smile at her with the trust she gave only to those she truly believed in. And saw Sienna cry alone at night, like a wounded animal licking its wounds in the dark. Something stirred in Lucian, something he thought had died when Isabella left. He did not know what to call it. Curiosity, empathy, or something more dangerous. He picked up the phone and called Marcus. "I want to know everything about Sienna Hayes," he ordered her past. Her family, everything, find out why a woman like that lives on the street. Then he hung up and looked back at the screen. Sienna had fallen asleep again with the iron bar in her hand like a child holding a teddy bear. And Lucian wondered what story had made her this way. What story had taught her to fight like a warrior, to cry like an abandoned child, and to love as if she had never been betrayed. He wanted to know. He needed to know. 3 days after the call with Marcus, Lucian had his answers. He sat in his office with a thick file on the desk, while Marcus stood opposite with an expression he rarely wore. Lucian's right hand almost never looked unsettled, but today he looked as if he had seen a ghost. "Report," Lucian ordered. "Sienna Hayes, 27 years old." Marcus began in a lower voice than usual. Her mother died of cancer when she was 7. Her father remarried a woman who was alcoholic and violent. She was abused throughout her childhood, with medical records showing multiple hospitalizations for broken bones and severe burns. Lucian said nothing, and only nodded for him to continue. She had a half-sister named Mia, 10 years younger. When Sienna was 17, the stepmother was arrested for drugs. The girls were placed in foster care and separated. The younger sister was placed with a family whose foster father had prior accusations of child abuse, though never convicted. Marcus paused and swallowed. The sister died by suicide at 10. She jumped from the 3rd floor. Sienna witnessed it. Silence. Something cold climbed Lucian's spine. Not fear, but rage. He thought of Lily, and could not imagine losing her that way. "What else?" he asked tightly. After her sister's death, she ran from foster care. At 18, she was trafficked. Marcus placed a photo on the desk of a house from a police raid. She was held there for 2 years. 2 years in an illegal brothel. Lucian's hand clenched white. "There is a medical note in the raid report," Marcus continued, almost whispering. "She became pregnant and was forced to abort in the 5th month." Lucian closed his eyes. He had seen and done terrible things, but this went beyond what he could accept. After the rescue, she vanished from the system, Marcus finished. No address, no job, no records. For 7 years, she lived like a ghost on the streets of Chicago. Lucian opened his eyes and looked out the window. In the garden, Sienna was sitting on a bench with Lily teaching her how to hold the iron bar, and gently adjusting her grip with a patience he would not have believed possible in someone who had been through such hell. She lost everything, Lucian said slowly. Her sister, her child, her freedom, her dignity. And the first thing she did when she saw a child in danger was run in without knowing who the enemy was or whether she would die. She is stronger than anyone I have ever met, boss, Marcus said. Or, she broke a long time ago and this is how she keeps herself from falling apart completely. Lucian did not answer. He only watched Sienna through the glass, watched her smile at Lily, with the rare smile she showed only around his daughter. And he understood. She did not save Lily for money or fame or to impress anyone. She saved Lily because she could not save Mia. She saved Lily because in those brown eyes she saw her sister. She saved Lily because it was the only way she knew how to atone for those she had lost. 20 miles east of the Moretti estate, inside an abandoned warehouse in the industrial outskirts of Chicago, Viktor Kozlov was in a fury. The 65-year-old head of the Bratva, with close-cropped gray hair and a face scarred like a map of past wars, was smashing the wooden table in front of him with his fist, blood seeping from his knuckles, though he felt no pain because rage had swallowed everything else. Yuri, his right hand, and most loyal man for 30 years, was now in Moretti's hands, surely being questioned somewhere underground and spilling Bratva secrets like blood from a wound. 4 elite soldiers were down. A perfect kidnapping plan was destroyed. And all because of what? Because of a stray homeless woman who came from nowhere. Viktor had watched the hacked park camera footage again and again. The thin woman with the iron bar charging his men like a mad dog, fighting as if she did not fear death, as if her own life meant less than the life of a child. And she had won. No, not won. She had delayed them long enough for Moretti to arrive. But the result was the same. Viktor had failed, and the name Kozlov was now a joke in the Chicago underworld. The Bratva boss defeated by a stray cat. Who gave me information on that bitch? Viktor roared, turning to Alexei, his 30-year-old son standing rigid in the corner. I want to know who she is, where she came from, and why she interfered. Alexei nodded and made a call, and minutes later had the answer. Sienna Hayes, he reported. 27. Homeless. No family, no backers. She just happened to be in the park and decided to step in. She is now at the Moretti estate, protected like a VIP guest. Happened to be there, Viktor scoffed with a sound like bones breaking in the dark. Nothing is accidental in this world. That bitch stole my victory and made me a fool before Moretti. She will pay. What will you do? Alexei asked. Viktor went to the window looking out over the Chicago night, his eyes no longer burning with rage but with something more dangerous. Calculation. Moretti thinks he can protect her forever. Viktor said slowly. He is wrong. No one can protect anyone forever. It only takes one lapse, 1 second of distraction, and the prey falls into the hunter's hands. He turned back to Alexei with eyes sharp as blades. I want you watching the Moretti estate around the clock, find weaknesses in his security, and when that woman leaves even 1 step outside, you bring her to me alive. Alexei nodded with a cruel smile. He had inherited his father's cruelty but not his patience. He wanted blood now. And what about Moretti? He asked. He will not sit still if we touch her. Moretti will be busy with other troubles. Viktor smiled darkly. I have friends on the city council, and there will be sudden investigations into his legitimate businesses, enough to divide his attention, and when he looks away, we strike. The shadow of the Bratva was moving through the Chicago night, like a snake sliding toward its prey, and Sienna, the woman who dared stand between Viktor and his victory, had no idea she was now the #1 target on the Bratva boss's list of revenge. 2 weeks after Sienna arrived at the Moretti estate, her ribs had begun to heal. She could walk. She could breathe deeply without the pain like knives. She could hold the iron bar without her hands shaking, and she began to feel trapped. The estate was beautiful, luxurious, and safe, but it was still a cage. She was not used to being confined or protected. She had taken care of herself for 10 years, and depending on anyone, even the most powerful Mafia boss in Chicago, made her feel indebted, and Sienna hated debt. That night, she accidentally overheard Lucian's meeting with his men. She was not trying to eavesdrop. The door was simply not fully closed. Kozlov is regrouping, Marcus said. He lost Yuri, but he still has Alexei, and at least 50 loyal gunmen. Our sources say he is planning revenge. Target, Lucian asked. Unclear, but possibly this estate, or our businesses, or both. I suggest we strike first. Hit his base before he can move. Sienna stood outside with her heart racing. Kozlov, the Bratva boss who ordered Lily's kidnapping and whose plan she ruined, was now planning revenge. For Lily and for her, she could not let that happen. She could not sit in an ivory tower while others fought to protect her. She had survived hell by not waiting for rescue. The next day she asked Lucian to let her join the attack. No, he refused immediately. You are not my soldier. This is not your war. They targeted Lily because I stopped them, Sienna argued. I have responsibility. Your responsibility is to stay here and recover, Lucian said with no room for negotiation. I will handle Kozlov. You stay with Lily. Sienna pretended to accept, but inside another plan formed. A heavy guilt weighed on her chest. She couldn't bear the thought of Lily or Lucian's men bleeding again in a war she had triggered. She felt like a magnet for danger, and if she stayed, the estate would never be truly safe. Her survival instinct told her it was a trap, but her heart demanded she end this threat herself before any more Moretti blood was spilled. She had spent the day memorizing guard schedules, camera blind spots, and stealing Kozlov's address from Lucian's map. She dressed in dark clothes, hid the iron bar in her coat, and slipped out through the garden gate. Her heart pounded, but her hands were steady. She had done worse to survive. It took 2 hours to reach the industrial zone by walking and hitching a truck. Kozlov's warehouse stood at the end of a quiet road, with yellow light leaking from dirty windows. She did not intend to attack alone, only to observe and gather information for Lucian. But she underestimated Kozlov. They were waiting. As soon as she entered the area, a flashlight hit her face. 4 shadows surrounded her. Before she could draw the iron bar, a blow to the back of her neck took her down, and the world went dark. When she woke, she was tied to a metal chair in a damp room, with her hands chained behind her and feet bound to the legs. Viktor Kozlov sat before her with a predatory smile. The stray cat walked into the trap, Viktor said in thick Russian accented English. I did not expect it to be this easy. I thought I would have to attack the Moretti estate, but you brought yourself to me as a gift. Sienna said nothing, and only met his gaze in defiance. She knew begging would please him. She had met men like him before, who enjoyed fear more than violence. You are brave, Viktor said, or stupid, I have not decided. But you will tell me everything about Moretti's security, his schedule, his weaknesses. She laughed softly through the pain. I know nothing, I am only his guest. Viktor signaled Alexei, who stepped forward and punched her. Her head snapped sideways and blood filled her mouth, but she did not cry out. You will talk, Viktor said coldly. Sooner or later everyone does. The question is how many fingers you want to keep when you do. Alexei drew a knife, its blade gleaming under yellow light. Sienna thought of Lily's smile and laughter and whispered, I will not say anything even if you kill me. Viktor shrugged as if amused. We will see. And the nightmare began. Lucian discovered that Sienna was gone at 3 a.m. when the security cameras recorded her slipping out through the garden gate. He had not slept that night like so many nights since she entered his life. He replayed the footage again and again, watching her thin figure disappear into the dark, and fury flared in his chest like fire. She is out of her mind, he growled, slamming his hand on the desk. What does she think she is doing? Marcus immediately tracked the signal from the phone they had secretly sewn into Sienna's coat. A precaution Lucian had ordered the week before. The signal led to the industrial outskirts, exactly where Kozlov's base was suspected to be, and then it vanished. Lucian did not hesitate. He ordered the full force assembled, 50 men armed to the teeth ready in 15 minutes. The Moretti convoy tore through the Chicago night, racing toward the industrial zone. Lucian sat in the front seat, gripping his gun, gray eyes burning like hellfire. He did not understand why he was this angry. She was just a homeless woman he had happened to shelter. She was not his. She did not belong to him. Yet the thought of her being tortured by Kozlov, bleeding and hurting, made him want to burn the world. When they arrived, he did not wait. He kicked in the warehouse door, guns roared, and hell was unleashed. Shots thundered, screams rang, glass shattered, bones cracked. Moretti's men flooded in like a black tide, overwhelming the Bratva guards. Lucian ignored the battle and hunted only for Sienna. He moved down corridors, shooting anyone in his way until he found the room where she was held. The sight made his blood boil. Sienna was tied to a chair, her face bloody and bruised hair, matted with blood, clothes torn. Yet her silver-gray eyes were open, still burning with defiance, still unbroken. Viktor stood beside her, knife bloody, a cruel smile on his lips, until he saw Lucian, and it vanished. Moretti, Viktor hissed. You came fast. You touched my people, Lucian said coldly, though his eyes burned. Your people, Viktor scoffed. Since when is this homeless bitch yours? Since she chose to stand between my daughter and your dogs. Lucian raised his gun. Since she bled. To protect my family from that moment, she is mine. And no one touches what is mine. Viktor reached for his gun, but was a fraction too slow. Lucian fired once clean through Viktor's forehead, and the Bratva boss fell, eyes still open, smile frozen. Beside him, Alexei lunged with his knife. But Marcus's silenced pistol barked twice, dropping the son beside the father before he could reach Lucian. Lucian stepped over the bodies like stepping over trash, and cut Sienna free. She looked up, lips, split eyes swollen, yet she tried to smile. "You are late," she whispered hoarse. "You left without telling me," Lucian replied, his voice still cold, though his hands gently wiped blood from her face. "We are even." 6 months later, Sienna stood on the balcony of the Moretti estate, looking down at the garden where Lily played with her German Shepherd Shadow. She was no longer the homeless woman with a rusted bar. She was Lily's personal guard, trained by Marcus, armed with the best weapons, respected by the Moretti family. She had a room beside Lily's clean clothes, 3 meals a day, and a family to belong to. The scars on her body remained from her stepmother, from the brothel, from the fight with the Bratva, but she was no longer ashamed of them. They were proof she survived, that she fought, that she did not give up. She had not forgotten the boy who had shared his last crust of bread with her in the cold. At her quiet request, Lucian had brought Tommy into the estate, giving him a position as an apprentice in the kitchens where he would never go hungry again. Now, Tommy was no longer a ghost of the streets, but a child with a future, just like her. "Sienna," Lily ran up, hugging her. "Did you see Shadow catch the ball?" "I taught him." "I saw." Sienna smiled, stroking her hair. "You did great." Footsteps sounded, and Sienna turned to see Lucian in his perfect black suit, though his eyes were no longer cold. When he looked at Lily and Sienna, they softened in a way only they ever saw. "Daddy," Lily ran to him. "Daddy, look at Shadow, I taught him." Lucian lifted her, kissed her forehead, set her down. "Go play, Daddy needs to talk to Sienna." Lily ran off, leaving them in familiar silence. Lucian stood beside Sienna, looking out. "What are you thinking?" he asked. Sienna paused, then smiled, the first truly free smile she had in 10 years. "I think this is the first time in 10 years I am not afraid of tomorrow." Lucian did not answer. He just stood beside her, shoulder to shoulder, watching Lily laugh with Shadow. 2 broken souls full of scars had found each other in darkness and violence. They did not know the future or what was growing between them, but they knew one thing: they were no longer alone. The woman who once had nothing had finally found everything, not because someone gave it to her, but because she fought for it scar by scar. And that is the lesson this story wishes to share. Life may knock you down not once, but many times, cruelly, unfairly. You may lose those you love, lose hope, lose yourself in dark years. But as long as you refuse to give up, as long as you rise after each fall, as long as your heart still beats for something greater than yourself, you have not lost. Sienna is not a superhero. She is only a woman who walked through hell and refused to let hell define her. She chose love when she could choose hate. She chose protection when she could turn away. She chose hope when she could choose despair. And that is true strength. Not muscles or weapons, but the choice to become better even when the world pushes you into darkness. Thank you for listening to Sienna's story to the end. If it touched you, if you felt moved or inspired, please take a second to subscribe, like, and share this video with those you love. Every subscription, every like, every share is fuel for us to keep bringing meaningful stories. We would love to know how you feel about this story. Have you faced moments you thought you could not survive but did? Have you met someone like Sienna who lost everything but kept a kind heart? Or have you been protected when you needed it most? Share your story in the comments. We read and cherish every word. Finally, we wish you all good health, a life full of joy and peace. No matter how hard life is, remember, after the rain the sky clears, and you deserve happiness. Goodbye and see you in the next video.